Hey, welcome to the doctor's den. Leads are not revenue. Let's start there. A full pipeline looks great. Tens, hundreds, thousands of leads. Constant inquiries, buzzing sales dashboard. It feels like success. But is it? What if I told you that more leads won't guarantee more money? In fact, chasing leads might be the very thing that's stalling your business growth. Hi, I'm Dr. David Leitner, and I am the Chief Rhydler. I'd like you to riddle me this. I can be full without holding anything. I can multiply, yet still be empty. The more you chase me, the less I'm worth. What am I? I'd like us to try and figure that out together. Now, I want you to imagine this scenario for a moment. A man has a well with an endless supply of water. He spends all of his time collecting buckets and setting them next to the well, believing that the more buckets he has, the more water he's going to store. But when he goes to take a drink, he realizes that the buckets are cracked and leaking. He was so focused on collecting, he never actually checked to see if the buckets could hold anything, or if they'd be able to hold things over time or be used over time. How many businesses do you think are doing the same thing with their leads? This is something I call lead addiction. The obsession with collecting leads without ensuring that they convert into revenue. And this can lead to the illusion of success. I once worked with a business owner. Let's call him Jake. Now, Jake ran a fast-growing marketing agency. He was spending thousands of dollars a month on ads, generating hundreds of leads. And when I sat down with him, his CRM was overflowing. But when I asked him strategically, just as a client, like, what about revenue? He sort of hesitated. And I remember this to this day. He looked at me and he goes, well, we're growing. We just need more time to close those deals. But that never happened. Because Jake continually focused on getting new leads and was focused on the wrong thing. And no matter how much I tried to convince him, he believed that what he was doing was the right thing. So I had to let him go as a client. I think it was 6-7 months later, he came back, and this time he was ready to think strategically. So instead of assuming more leads would fix his problems, we shifted his focus. We looked at his entire sale process, his strategy writ large. We checked out his pricing. We even took a deep dive into like how his team was approaching the entire concept of closing deals, because each of them had a part in it. And as we were talking and he was explaining what his vision looked like for his agency, he realized that scaling wasn't about collecting more opportunities through leads. It was about maximizing the right leads. And that shift changed everything. So what's the problem? The problem is the difference between vanity metrics and real metrics. Businesses love big numbers. High lead volume looks phenomenal. Website visits, social media engagements, it looks great on reports. It feels like, from personal experience, I can tell you, it feels like momentum. But these are not the numbers that help determine success. See, leads are just clients in potentia. They're potential. They don't mean anything until they turn into actual customers. So what are some of the real metrics? Things like conversion rate. How many of those leads actually become paying clients. If you think about it, let's think about this for a second. Let's do some basic math, right? If you've got 1,000 leads, but only 50 of them convert, that's a 5% conversion rate. Now what happens if you double your leads, but don't improve the conversion, right? You only convert 50. You've doubled the amount of work you're doing to get people into your pipeline, but they're not translating into revenue. Or if you're really lucky, let's say you've doubled your pipeline, but you're still at 5% conversion rate. How hard are you working? So instead of asking, how do I get more leads, ask, how can I improve my conversion rate? And that's a hard question to answer. I'm going to be very straightforward, because conversion is not a one-off. It's something that can change a little bit from client to client, depending on what you're selling or how you're selling. But there are certain things you can do. We can do things like pre-qualify leads before they enter our pipeline. Something I've started doing a lot. Or we can improve our follow-up speed and consistency. I know people are using AI to do this. I'm actually playing with it now. And one of the things that I really think is important is if you can address objections before they arise, it's a great way to take care of that. Another thing that we need to look at is, what's the customer lifetime value? How much revenue does a customer generate over time? If a customer buys from you multiple times, their long-term value matters more than just that first purchase. So do you have the ability to upscale, cross-sell? Those can be revenue multipliers if you have that ability. And if you don't, for whatever reason, then is that single purchase going to make the amount of energy you're putting in worthwhile? Now, happy customers bring referrals. And I'll tell you a secret, even people who don't choose you as their service provider or the person who's going to do whatever it is you do, the way you make them feel matters. They might refer you anyway to other people. Now, another thing we need to look at and think about is, well, how is our search and pursuit of leads impacting our cash flow? Because how money hits the bank can be very impactful. Closing a deal but only getting paid 90 days later can negatively impact your ability to do certain things. And whenever I try and make sure that the payment terms are a little bit friendlier than that. And sometimes maybe thinking about that deposit to secure a commitment or milestone payments can be a worthwhile way of talking about how a customer is going to experience the process you're going to put them through. Talking about money is just as important sometimes as talking about what it is the customer is going to get. Now, there is a financial risk to lead addiction. I want to break this down. And this is from personal experience. Leads don't pay bills. They don't. Cash flow does. If your revenue is not growing, if your bank account isn't reflecting the leads that you've got, then what are they worth? And one of the major things that I've experienced and learned from is the idea of a cost acquisition trap. If you're spending more on lead generation than you're making from those leads, you're not scaling, you're bleeding. Now, many businesses fall into this trap, and there was a very short period of time where I did the same thing, where I thought leads solved my problems. But it wasn't about the leads, it was about the conversion system. And when we don't do that, we just burn through money. There are people who will talk about, warming up leads on LinkedIn, for instance, and maybe doing that in the comments, and then in the DMs, and then trying to convert. There are a lot of different methods for doing that. You have to find the right one for you and for your team. But you still need to think about that in depth and actually write those processes down for yourself. And third, there's the issue of the delayed sales cycle. The more we chase leads without a strong conversion process, the longer we go without actually having real revenue. And when we scale without revenue, when we hire someone, we bring in new, pay for new apps, all that fun stuff, we're creating scaling debt. Debt is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's something we seriously need to consider whether it's worthwhile, especially when we're talking about lead debt. Now, I once consulted for a SaaS company who was getting something like 5,000 free signups per month. And that sounds really impressive, but their conversion rate was under 2%. That meant that like 98% or more of their leads were not leading to revenue. And they were running massive ad campaigns. And they were celebrating the number of people who downloaded and the leads and but they were financially sinking. So how do you break the addiction? How do we break this addiction? And it is an addiction, or it can be. So I want to take a moment and just talk about that. I'm not saying leads are bad. You need leads. And you need to identify who your ideal clients are, or even the secondary groupings of clients, potential clients you have. How we pursue those leads matters. What we do in order to get those leads into our pipeline, how much time, how much energy, how much money we spend on those matters. So in order to break the addiction, we kind of need to shift our focus. The first thing I would say is shift your focus from leads to conversions. A small number of high quality leads that convert will always outperform a massive pipeline of cold prospects. And examining how you're converting, what are the things that work, learning from your mistakes, and taking the time and energy to really understand what conversion means for you. Because it's different for you than it is for other people. Yes, there are certain steps that most people go through, et cetera, but ultimately, we're each unique. Each company, each person has certain unique aspects to their conversion process, their own values, their own concepts and ideas. But learn them, and you know how to do it for yourself. Step 2, align lead generation with your cash flow and your cash flow needs. Harsh truth, a lead doesn't mean anything until it converts to money in the bank. So don't assume that by pursuing more leads, you're going to necessarily get more money in the bank. Instead, try and search out those specific leads that will help convert into money in the bank. And that revenue, then choose how you're going to use that in order to pursue more leads that are worthwhile. And the last thing I'm going to suggest is that you really take a look at your pricing and payment structure and how you present it to your clients. Know your value. I want to be really clear on this. What you do is valuable. It has a lot of worth. So you have to be clear about what you give and what you get. When you try and convert, or you're offering services without this clear understanding about yourself and a clear understanding of what you expect from your client in terms of payments, whether it's securing payment up front or a payment method, you are creating instability in your conversion process. So what's the answer to the riddle? I can be full without holding anything. I can multiply yet still be empty. The more you chase me, the less I'm worth. What am I? The answer is leads. Leads can be full. You can have a full lead, cold lead pipeline, and they hold no value because it's the wrong person or the wrong company. They can multiply and still be empty. You can actually see them multiplying as people bring on people, but they don't bring you anything. The more you chase them without a proper conversion, without understanding who your clients are, the less valuable they become. So what's the takeaway? Scaling isn't about how many people you attract. It's about the people who actually pay you. Are you chasing leads? Or are you scaling your business? If you're ready to break the addiction of leads and perhaps scale the right way, I would say start by tracking the metrics that actually matter. Focus on conversion. Look at how it impacts cash flow and profitability. Because at the end of the day, leads mean absolutely nothing until they turn into real revenue. If this resonated with you, reach out. Me and my team help businesses scale strategically. And don't forget to sign up for the newsletter, The Riddler. You can see it down below. Thanks for spending time with me today. I hope you learned something. See you next time.